The winter of Helena's 12th year carved itself into memory like frost into glass, sharp, cold, and impossible to ignore. Raventon, Connecticut, had never seen snow like that. For weeks, white powder covered the town like a shroud, muting the sound of life beneath a thick silence. And somewhere in the middle of that hush, a sleek black Lexus crawled its way through the frozen streets. Inside, warmth battled frost. Leather seats heated from beneath, and the dashboard vents exhaled artificial comfort. But Helena felt none of it. Cold sat deep in her chest, tight and unmoving. Her mother's perfume filled the car, rose and something acidic, clinging to the air like judgment. "Did you pack everything?" her mother asked, not looking at her. Her voice was clipped, impatient, the kind of tone one used when speaking to a service worker who had made a mistake. "Yes," Helena murmured. Her mother adjusted the sky-blue Hermes scarf around her neck, her perfectly painted nails tapping against her oversized sunglasses. "I canceled my plans for this," she said to the man behind the wheel. "Can you believe that?" Helena didn't look at him. Her father, the executive, the man in the tailored charcoal suit. He said nothing. He rarely did. "I told you," her mother continued, "we can't keep bringing her around society. Imagine if someone saw that face." Helena's hand rose instinctively to cover her left cheek, the patch of discolored, wrinkled skin that had haunted her since she was 4. Her mother never let her forget. "It's your fault for touching the stove," she would say. "Such a clumsy child." But Helena remembered it differently. She remembered yelling, a crash, the sudden searing pain, and then the blame. The Lexus turned into a familiar neighborhood. Unlike the minimalist mansions of their own street, these homes had character, porches, gardens, warmth. She recognized the iron gate before she saw the house. White columns, snow-dusted hedges, the tall front door painted red like a beacon, her grandmother's house. Helena sat up straighter. Grandma Aura was nothing like her parents. She ran a natural foods company, Aura Essentials, and dressed in colorful shawls instead of designer labels. Her voice was soft but sure, and she smelled like ginger tea and lavender soap. She didn't flinch at Helena's face. She asked about books, not beauty, but something felt wrong. The car didn't pull into the driveway. It stopped just outside. Her mother turned in her seat, sunglasses off now, eyes cold and direct. "Get out." "What?" Helena blinked. "Are we not—" "You're staying here." Her mother's voice was flat. "I'm done pretending. Your face, your presence, it's exhausting. Wait." "No." Helena looked at her father. "Dad!" He didn't meet her eyes. He reached across her mother to open the door. "Go," he said quietly. "Please," Helena whispered, her throat tightening. "Don't leave me." No answer. Just the hiss of cold air as the door swung. "Open!" She stepped out, her sneakers crunching into snow. The door slammed shut behind her. The Lexus reversed, tires whining against ice until it disappeared down the street in a mist of exhaust and silence. Helena stood frozen, her breath sharp in her throat. One small cardboard box sat beside her, damp from the snow. Inside were all her belongings, 2 sweaters, a handful of library books, and a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. Her knees gave out. She dropped beside the box, arms wrapped tight around herself. The wind cut through her coat. Her teeth chattered. "Am I really a monster?" she whispered to the snow. The front door of the mansion burst open. "Helena!" Aura ran toward her, her shawl flying behind her like wings. She dropped to her knees in the snow, pulling Helena into her arms without hesitation. "My darling girl, what happened?" Helena couldn't answer. She just sobbed into her grandmother's coat as Aura rocked her gently, whispering something over and over in her ear. "You're safe now. You're safe." Inside, Warmth wrapped around Helena like a second skin. The fire was lit in the hearth. The scent of cinnamon and vanilla clung to the air. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes appeared from the kitchen. "Lena, the housekeeper. Pobrecita!" she gasped, rushing over with a thick blanket. "Come sit! You're frozen!" Helena didn't protest as she was led to the velvet couch and handed a steaming cup of cocoa. Whipped cream melted into the surface, and the mug warmed her palms. Aura knelt in front of her. "Tell me everything." At first, Helena said nothing. Then the words spilled out, biting, broken, and fast. The move, the car ride, the final words, the silence. Aura listened with stillness that only age and love could teach. When Helena finished, Aura's eyes were hard with anger, but her voice remained gentle. "They are truly heartless," she said. "But you, Helena, will never be alone again. This house is your home now." Helena bit her lip, trembling. "But my face. They said there's something you need to know." Aura took a slow breath. "You didn't touch the stove by accident." Helena froze. "You were pushed." "What?" "It was during a fight. Your father had just found out he was being demoted. Your mother, furious, shoved him. He stumbled, and you were nearby." The memory was blurry. She had always tried to forget. "They blamed you because it was easier than facing their guilt." Helena stared into her cocoa. Her hands trembled. "It wasn't my fault," she whispered. "No, darling, it never was." Aura held her close. "We'll get you the best care, not just for your scars, but for your heart." "But my mother said it was too expensive." Aura smiled gently. "Sweetheart, Era Essentials made over 200 million last year. We'll go to Boston. There's a surgeon at Massachusetts, General, who specializes in burn reconstruction." Lena chimed in from the kitchen. "They help many children, and you, mi niña, will be one of them." That night, Helena slept in a canopy bed beneath lavender walls, wrapped in soft blankets. Outside, snow still fell, but for the first time in years, she felt warm. Before bed, Aura peeked in and whispered, "Good night, my sweet girl." Helena whispered back, "Thank you for everything." Helena awoke the next morning to soft sunlight streaming through, lavender curtains and the faint scent of honey toast. For a moment, she forgot everything: the snow, the Lexus, the box on the sidewalk. But as she sat up, the ache returned, low and quiet, like a bruise beneath her ribs. Downstairs, the warmth was alive. Lena was humming in the kitchen, flipping something golden on a skillet. Aura sat at the table, reading a newspaper and sipping tea from a wide ceramic mug. She looked up as Helena entered, setting the paper down at once. "Good morning, my sweet girl. Did you sleep well?" Helena nodded. "I think so. Come eat. You're all skin and bones." The table was already set with thick slices of toast, fresh berries, and a pitcher of orange juice. Lena winked at her. "Made extra for you." Helena sat, still unsure how to relax in a space that wasn't threatening. She picked at the food, chewing slowly, while Aura watched her with eyes that didn't judge, only waited. "I've been thinking," Aura said after a quiet moment, "about what we talked about last night." Helena swallowed. The words returned. The shove, the lie, the scar. Aura reached across the table and placed her hand gently over Helena's. "I know it's a lot, too much for one night, but I didn't want to let the truth stay buried any longer. I don't remember it happening. That's not unusual. Trauma does that. But I do." Helena blinked. "You were there?" "No," Aura said, softly. But Lena was. Lena behind the counter froze. "I'm sorry, mi amor," she said, turning slowly. "I didn't know if I should speak." Helena turned to her, eyes wide. "You were visiting that day?" Aura continued. You stopped by to drop off a care package. You heard shouting." Lena nodded, stepping closer. "Your mother was angry. Your father was drunk. I didn't want to interfere, but then I heard a crash, and when I looked through the window, I saw your little body on the floor, screaming. I ran inside," Lena said, her voice cracking. "But they were already yelling at you, telling you it was your fault." Helena's breath caught in her throat. "You were 4, Aura said gently, "and they needed someone to blame." Silence wrapped around the room like fog. Helena stared at her plate. "So they just lied?" "They buried it," Aura said, "and hoped you would too." "I thought I deserved it," Helena whispered. "That it was my punishment." Aura reached out, cupping Helena's face in her warm, firm hands. "You were a child. There is nothing you could have done to deserve what happened to you." A sob broke loose before Helena could stop it. It cracked her ribs open, raw and sudden. Aura stood and wrapped her arms around her, holding tight, letting her cry into the linen of her blouse. When Helena finally pulled back, her eyes were red, but her shoulders were lighter. "I want to get better," she whispered. "Not just my skin, me." Aura smiled through tears of her own. "Then we will." That afternoon, they sat together in Aura's study, a high-ceilinged room filled with books, plants, and the comforting smell of old paper and sandalwood. On the wall hung a portrait of a younger Aura, arms crossed proudly in front of her first Aura Essentials storefront. "I've already called Massachusetts General," Aura said, opening a leather-bound planner. "They have the best pediatric burn unit in the Northeast. And I have a contact there, a reconstructive surgeon named Dr. Kamari." Helena's eyes widened. "It's real?" Aura turned to her. "Oh yes, you deserve the best." Helena looked down at her hands. "What if they can't fix it all? Then we focus on healing what we can and learning to live with what remains." Aura's voice was calm, solid. "Your value isn't measured by the smoothness of your skin." Helena bit her lip. "But it's the first thing people see." Aura nodded. "And the last thing that should matter." There was a knock on the door. Lena peeked in, holding a wrapped package. "The mail came. One is for Helena." Helena blinked in surprise as Lena handed her the parcel. Inside was a book, The Girl Who Chased the Moon, a fantasy novel Helena had placed on hold weeks ago at the library. A slip of paper had been tucked inside. "You left before you could pick it up," Lena said softly. "So, I went back." Helena turned the book in her hands, running a finger over the embossed cover. "Thank you." That night, curled up in her new bed, she opened the book and read until the words blurred. The heroine in the story had wings made of ash and a heart that glowed in the dark. She wasn't pretty, but she was brave. The next morning, Aura stood at the edge of Helena's bed with a small suitcase. "We leave for Boston this weekend." Helena sat up fast. "Already? The sooner we begin, the better. But what if I'm not ready?" Aura sat beside her. "Readiness isn't a feeling, Helena. It's a choice. We're choosing to take your life back." Helena nodded slowly. She touched her cheek and imagined the skin whole again. She didn't dare hope for perfect, but maybe possible. "Do you think it will hurt?" "Yes," Aura said honestly, "but not forever." Helena looked into her grandmother's eyes and found something there she hadn't seen in her parents' eyes in years. Truth. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'd be worried if you weren't. But I'll be with you every step." Helena took a deep breath. "Then let's go," Aura smiled. "That's my girl." On the drive to Boston, the trees passed by in a blur of white and brown. Lena had packed snacks in a tote bag. Aura's driver, Thomas, kept the ride smooth and quiet. Helena sat with her book in her lap, rereading the same paragraph over and over. When the hospital came into view, glass and steel and wide glass doors, her stomach turned. Inside, everything was spotless. People moved quickly in white coats and soft shoes. Dr. Kamari was younger than she expected, with kind eyes and a calm voice. He examined her scars with gentle precision, making notes on a tablet. "This is a complex case," he said finally. "But you're young, and your skin still has regenerative strength. We can work with that." "Will it ever be normal?" Helena asked. Dr. Kamari smiled softly. "What's normal? Faces are like stories. Ours just has more chapters." She nodded, unsure whether to cry or laugh. "We'll start with laser therapy and regenerative injections," he said. "Later, if needed, some grafting. But first, prepare your body and mind." As they left the hospital, Helena turned to Aura. "I want to try." "Even if it's hard." Aura placed an arm around her. "That's the bravest thing you could say." That evening, Helena sat at the window of her new room in Boston, temporary housing for long-term patients. The city lights twinkled like stars, and for the first time, Helena allowed herself to believe that her life might change, not overnight, but day by day, word by word, scar by scar. Helena's first treatment took place on a gray Tuesday, the kind where the sky looked like it might collapse under its own weight. The hospital room was bright but sterile, the hum of machines louder than her thoughts. Aura held her hand as nurses prepped the space, calmly speaking in acronyms and clipped instructions. "Breathe," Aura whispered. "Just breathe with me." Helena nodded, but her whole body trembled. The first laser treatment wasn't as terrifying as she had feared, but it wasn't kind either. A cold gel numbed her skin, followed by the quick, sharp pulse of light. It wasn't fire, not like the first. Time. But it stirred something old in her, a memory that lived under her ribs like a sleeping animal. She clenched her jaw and stayed still. When it was over, she sat quietly while a nurse applied cream to the tender skin. "You did beautifully," the nurse said with a gentle smile. "Most adults don't handle that as well." Helena didn't feel brave. She felt hollow, but Aura hugged her like she'd just finished a marathon. "First step done. You're on your way, my girl." That night, back in the guest apartment, Lena was already waiting with hot lentil soup and warm pita bread. The moment Helena stepped inside, the scent wrapped around her like a soft blanket. "Ay, mi niña valiente," Lena exclaimed, cupping, her face gently, careful of the treated skin. "Come sit. I made your favorite. Well, it will be." Helena gave a tired laugh and let herself sink into the oversized armchair. The steam from the soup cleared her nose. The taste soothed her throat. And for the first time that day, she felt human again. "I didn't scream," she said softly. "No screaming?" Lena gasped. "Then you must be stronger than half the doctors in there." Aura chuckled and raised her tea. "To Helena, who doesn't scream." They toasted with mugs and spoons, laughter rising into the corners of the warm kitchen. The following week brought more than treatments. Helena stood outside a tall building made of dark brick and ivy-covered walls. Avon Hall Academy, her new school, her new chance. She clutched her backpack straps tightly, stomach in knots. Inside those walls were strangers, teenagers who didn't know her past, her name, her scars. A clean slate was supposed to be exciting, but it felt like walking into a room full of mirrors. Aura stood beside her, calm and steady. "You don't have to be anyone but yourself." "But what if they stare?" Helena asked, not looking. "Up." "Then let them, and give them something worth seeing." Helena took a shaky breath and nodded. She stepped forward. The lobby buzzed with voices and footsteps. Lockers slammed. Laughter echoed down corridors. and overhead speakers crackled with announcements. Helena tried to focus on walking straight, not bumping into anyone, not making eye contact too long. A woman with short hair and red-framed glasses approached, smiling. "You must be Helena. I'm Miss Corwin, your advisor. We're so happy to have you." She led Helena through the hallways, pointing out classrooms and reading rooms. "Here's the science wing, smells like vinegar on lab days, and this is the library. Some students never leave it." "I might like it there," Helena offered quietly. Miss Corwin smiled wider. "I thought you might." Her locker was near the middle of the hall. As she opened it, a girl nearby glanced over. Short curly hair, gray eyes, a pencil stuck behind one ear. She smiled. Not a smirk, not a pity smile. Just genuine. "Hey," she said. "New?" Helena nodded. "I'm Mara. I'm Helena. You into science?" Helena blinked. "Yeah, mostly chemistry." "Bless you," Mara laughed. "I'm useless at it. Maybe you can save me from academic doom." Helena smiled. Small, hesitant, but real. Maybe. Classes were harder than expected, not because of the material. Helena had always been a quick learner, but because her brain felt split. One part was listening to the teacher. The other kept waiting for whispers, stares, laughter, but they didn't come. No one called her names. No one pointed. When she correctly answered a difficult math question, the boy next to her whispered, "Nice." It was like walking on a floor. You expected to collapse, and finding it solid. At lunch, Mara slid into the seat across from her in the cafeteria without asking. "So, chemistry partners, please?" Helena nodded, surprised at how quickly her chest filled with warmth. Back at the clinic, treatments continued. Some days were easier than others. One afternoon, the pain was so sharp Helena had to grip the bed frame with white knuckles. She cried silently, tears soaking the paper sheet beneath her cheek. When it ended, Aura sat beside her and stroked her hair. "You did well. I didn't scream." "I know." Helena turned her face to her. "But I wanted to." "Wanting to scream," Aura said, "means you're still fighting. That's the point." One Saturday, Aura took her to a small cafe near the hospital. Brick walls, soft jazz, and shelves of secondhand books for customers to borrow. Over cinnamon rolls and ginger tea, they talked about everything and nothing. "You're growing," Aura said suddenly. Helena looked down. "I don't feel like it." "No," Aura said, "but I see it." Helena hesitated. "I want to. Someday I be like you." Aura laughed, but not mockingly. "Then start small. Be kind. Be curious. And don't forget who you are." That week at school, during literature, the teacher assigned personal essays. "Write about a moment that changed you," she said. "It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be true." Helena stared at her blank page for 10 minutes. Then, she wrote, "The moment I realized I wasn't to blame for my scar, something opened inside me. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was the start of something. A small room inside me with a door I thought had been locked forever." Mara read it over her shoulder. "Wow," she whispered. "That's really good." Helena flushed. "Thanks." "No, like. That's the kind of thing that stays with you." For the first time, Helena believed it might be true. As fall crept toward winter, she found her rhythm. Treatments continued, and the skin on her cheek began to change. So slowly she hardly noticed at first. Softer texture, less red, a smoother line near her jaw. The nurses documented it with photos, comparing week to week. "You're healing," Dr. Kamari told her. "Not just physically, I can see it in your posture." Helena smiled faintly. "I feel it." At school, Mara became more than just a friend. She became her mirror. When Helena doubted herself, Mara reminded her, When Helena grew quiet, Mara filled the space with laughter. They studied at Aura's mansion on weekends. Lena baked endlessly. The fireplace crackled as they reviewed equations and wrote essays. "You're smart, Helena," Mara said one evening. "The kind of smart that scares people." "Should I be worried?" "No, you should own it." One afternoon, Aura came home with a surprise. "I've hired a makeup artist," she said casually, "to come this weekend." Helena stiffened. "Makeup?" "Not to hide you," Aura said gently. "To show you." That Saturday, the artist was a woman named Junie, who wore colorful glasses and spoke with the calm authority of someone who had seen it all. "I don't do masks," Junie said. "I do mirrors." She taught Helena how to highlight her eyes, add softness to her skin tone, and emphasize her natural symmetry. When Junie turned the mirror to face her, Helena didn't flinch. She stared. "I look like you," Junie finished. That night, Aura watched her cross the living room with quiet pride. "You've taken your first steps, my girl." Helena touched her cheek gently. "It still hurts sometimes." "It will," Aura said, "but that's how we know it's real." Helena didn't answer. She just smiled. If the old Helena lived in shadows, the new one was slowly learning to step into the light. That light often came in the form of Mara. She was everything Helena was not: loud without apology, creative to a fault, always scribbling poems in the margins of her notebooks or humming songs she never quite finished. She wore mismatched earrings on purpose and wrote her name on her backpack in glitter glue. Her laugh was the kind that made teachers smile even when they wanted to scold her. And from day one, she stuck to Helena like gravity. "People at this school take themselves too seriously," Mara said one afternoon as they walked through the courtyard. Coats zipped up against the bite of November wind. "You've got cool hair. That already makes you an outlier. Also, you're a math genius. Basically, you're unstoppable." Helena smiled, tugging her hat down. "I'm not a genius." "Okay, humble, unstoppable math wizard," Mara said, linking their arms. They were different in many ways. Mara talked about art like it was air. Helena could get lost in molecular structures for hours, but somehow it worked. They balanced each other. More importantly, Mara never once asked about the scar. One Friday after school, Mara flopped dramatically into the library seat beside Helena. "I need your brain." Helena blinked. "What's wrong with your brain?" "It refuses to understand stoichiometry. It's a betrayal." Helena tried not to laugh, but failed. "You're not even in chemistry yet." "I'm anticipating the betrayal. I want you to tutor me preemptively." "Fine," Helena said, flipping her notebook toward Mara. "But in return, you have to read my history essay and tell me if it sounds boring." "Deal. But warning, I am very harsh." They spent 2 hours in the back corner of the library, exchanging facts and formulas and jokes. Mara corrected one sentence in Helena's essay and added 3 doodles in the margins: a cartoon rabbit, a girl with wild curls, and a crooked heart with stitches. "That's us," she said, tapping. "The heart." Helena stared at it. "You okay?" Mara asked. Helena nodded, surprised by the lump in her throat. "Yeah, I'm just not used to people being nice." Mara's smile softened. "Then I'll keep doing it until you get used to it." At home, Helena told Aura about Mara over dinner. The elder woman listened with a knowing expression. "She sounds like someone who sees you," Aura said. "She does, and she doesn't stare." Aura poured more tea. "That's rare and precious. Hold on to it." Later that night, Helena stood in front of the mirror in her bathroom. She had avoided doing that for months, years really. At most, she would glance quickly while brushing her teeth, always careful not to look directly at the left side of her face. But now she forced herself to stop. Look! The scar was still there, paler than before, less jagged, but still there. She traced it gently with one finger. "I'm Helena," she whispered to the girl in the mirror. "I'm smart. I'm kind. I'm not broken." It wasn't easy, but it wasn't impossible. 2 weeks later, Mara invited her to a weekend art workshop at the local library. "Please," she begged, "I can't go alone. The last time I did, a guy used actual dirt in his collage, and I didn't have anyone to give me the appropriate side-eye." "I'm not artistic," Helena warned. "You don't need to be. Just show up and mock the dirt." "Guy with me?" Helena agreed. They spent the afternoon surrounded by canvases and wild imaginations. Mara painted a chaotic forest filled with glowing creatures. Helena sketched geometric patterns and equations, which Mara promptly declared science, poetry. Near the end, the instructor gave them a challenge. Draw yourself as an animal, not the one you like, the one you are. Mara didn't hesitate. "Wolf, duh." "Why?" Helena asked. "Because I'm loud, loyal, and slightly unhinged." Helena looked at her blank paper. "Well?" Mara nudged her. "What about you?" She thought for a long time. Then she drew a bird with a crooked wing. "Kinda broken," she said, "but still flying." Mara looked at it for a full minute. Then she reached out and added something. A spark above the bird's head. A little light. "What's that?" Helena asked. "Hope," Mara said. That winter, snow returned to Raventon, layering the town in soft white again. This time it felt different. One afternoon, Helena came home from school and found Lena waiting with a package. Inside was a journal, leather-bound, thick, embossed with her initials. "It was your grandmother's idea," Lena said. "She thought you might want to write things down. Things you don't want to say out loud yet." Helena opened it and touched the first page. "That night," she wrote, "Today, Mara called me brilliant." I didn't argue with her this time. That's new. After another round of treatment, Dr. Kamari pulled Aura aside. "Her skin's responding better than expected. She's one of the fastest healers I've seen," Aura smiled. "She has a reason to heal now." Later, Aura shared the news over dinner. Helena blinked, stunned. "It's really working?" Aura nodded. "Yes, and I think your heart's healing even faster." Helena looked down at her plate. "I'm starting to like myself," she said quietly. "Not all the time, but sometimes." "That's everything," Aura whispered. "That's the beginning of everything." One Saturday night, Helena and Mira stayed over at the mansion. Lena made popcorn and set up the living room with pillows and blankets for a movie marathon. They didn't finish the movie. Instead, they lay awake talking for hours. "I want to be a writer," Mira confessed, "but not the tragic kind. I want to write stories where girls like us win." Girls like us? The ones who got looked at sideways. The ones who were told to stay small. Helena smiled. "I used to think happy endings weren't for people like me." Mira turned to her. "What about now?" Helena hesitated. "Now I think maybe we can write our own." In the early hours of morning, while Mara slept beside her, Helena stood in front of the mirror again. This time she didn't brace herself. She just looked, really looked, and then, slowly, she smiled. By January, the halls of Avanhal Academy no longer felt like a maze to Helena. Her name was printed neatly on a small brass plate above her locker. Her teachers knew who she was. Her classmates called her the math girl, with a mix of admiration and dread, and for once, she didn't mind being known. It started with a science quiz, then a perfect literature essay, then a robotics project that left the judges at the regional STEM fair stunned. "Who programmed this?" one of them asked, turning to the group. Helena stepped forward, heart pounding. "I did." He squinted at her name tag. "Helena, you're in 8th grade?" "Yes." He turned to the others. "Let's keep an eye on this one." The praise was unexpected, But what followed was harder to process: attention. For so long, Helena had trained herself to avoid notice. Now people were looking at her, really looking, but not with disgust or pity, with curiosity, with respect. She wasn't just the girl with the scar anymore, she was Helena Aries, and apparently she was impressive. Still, it felt fragile, like it could be taken away at any moment. At home, Aura noticed the shift before Helena could articulate it. "You're walking taller," she said one evening as they peeled carrots for stew. Helena smiled. "Maybe I'm just wearing thicker shoes." Or, "Maybe you're realizing who you really are." Helena glanced down at the vegetable scraps. "They're starting to say things about me at school." "Good things?" "Yes, but what if they stop?" "Then you keep being good. You shine whether they look or not." Aura's encouragement pushed Helena to enter the state science competition. She built a project on sustainable water filtration using natural materials. An idea sparked from one of Aura's old wellness journals. She worked for weeks, testing variables, writing code, building prototypes in the garage with Lena helping, to hold things steady while Helena soldered wires with shaky hands. The night before the fair, she sat at the kitchen table, anxiety swirling like steam from her tea. "What if it fails?" she asked quietly. Aura sat beside her. "Then you learn. But it won't be a failure." "How do you know?" "Because you've already won." Helena looked up. "I haven't even presented yet. You've built something from your mind. You've put yourself into the world. That's winning." The fair was held in a vast exhibition hall filled with posters, blinking lights, and teenage geniuses, explaining things faster than most adults could follow. Helena wore a deep green blouse and dark jeans. No makeup, no attempt to hide her scar. She stood tall in front of her display, next to a water filtration model that quietly dripped purified water into a beaker every 8.6 seconds. The judges came. They listened. They asked hard questions, and she answered every single one. One of them nodded slowly. "Have you considered applying to the Young Innovators Fellowship?" She blinked. "What's that?" "It's competitive, national, and it's exactly the kind of thing a mind like yours belongs in." She didn't win first place. She placed second overall, beating students 2 years older. But it wasn't the plaque that stayed with her. It was the applause. The kind that felt earned, not polite. Mira was waiting outside when she walked out. "I saw your name on the screen," she said, jumping up. "You're a legend now." Helena flushed. "I almost threw up." "But you didn't. Because you're unstoppable." Back at the mansion, Lena threw an impromptu celebration. Empanadas, sparkling apple juice, and a cake that read, "Science Queen" in pink frosting. Aura beamed the entire evening. Later, she called Helena into the study. "I want to show you something," she said, pulling a dusty folder from a drawer. Inside were newspaper clippings, early product sketches, handwritten lists. "This," Aura said, "was the beginning of Aura Essentials. I was 22. I had no money, one recipe, and a desperate need to prove something to myself." Helena ran her fingers across the faded ink. "Did people believe in you?" Aura chuckled. "Most didn't, but I did, eventually." She closed the folder. "I see that same fire in you." Helena sat quietly, holding the weight of the moment. "Do you think I could run something like this one day?" she asked. "I think," Aura said, "that you could build something even bigger." School life changed again. Teachers asked Helena to mentor younger students. She joined the science club, the debate team, even submitted a poem to the school literary magazine on a dare from Mara. To her horror and secret delight, it was published. "You're like a Renaissance girl," Mara declared. "What can't?" "You do?" "Apparently sports," Helena said, pointing at the bandage on her ankle from a tragic attempt at volleyball. They both laughed so loud the librarian shushed them. One afternoon, Helena was called into the headmistress's office. She entered cautiously, heart thumping. "Don't worry," the woman smiled. "This isn't bad. In fact, you've been nominated for the Rising Scholar Award. It's a regional honor, very prestigious." Helena blinked. "Me?" "Yes. The faculty submitted your name unanimously." She walked out of the office in a daze. Mara tackled her in the hallway. "Tell me that smile means what I think it means." "I've been nominated," Helena said softly. Mara screamed. Loudly. The award banquet was held in spring. The world had begun to thaw, and flowers pushed up through the soil like small, determined miracles. Helena stood backstage in a navy dress with silver embroidery, her scar faint but still visible. She no longer avoided mirrors. She had even learned how to curl her hair. Aura adjusted the pin on Helena's collar before she went on stage. "No matter what happens out there," she whispered, "you already shine." Helena stepped into the spotlight. When her name was called, the applause echoed. She didn't cry. She smiled. Later that night, back at home, she placed the plaque on her desk next to a stack of books and a small framed photo of her, Mara, and Aura at the fair. She stared at it for a long time. Then she opened her journal and wrote, "They saw more than my face. They saw me." And for the first time, she believed it too. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered in a thick cream envelope with an embossed crest in dark blue ink. Helena stood frozen on the porch, the envelope in her hands, her name printed in bold at the center. She opened it slowly. By the time she reached the word "Congratulations," she had dropped the letter and was yelling so loudly Lena ran from the kitchen with a dish towel still in hand. "I got in!" Helena cried, laughing and crying at once. "I got into Yale!" Aura appeared in the hallway, holding a teacup. "I knew it," she said simply, setting the cup down before embracing her granddaughter. "You were always meant for greatness. College was everything, and nothing like Helena imagined. The Yale campus was both intimidating and exhilarating. Stone, buildings that felt older than time, students from every background imaginable, and professors who quoted philosophers between bites of cafeteria salad. She studied management and social entrepreneurship, blending finance with ethics, theory with purpose. Her schedule was grueling: 8 a.m. lectures, late-night group projects, and endless reading. But Helena loved it. She thrived in it. For the first time, she wasn't fighting to prove she belonged. She was already there. She joined a student-led initiative called Thrive Collective, focused on nutrition access for underserved youth. They delivered fresh produce, taught basic cooking skills, and held wellness workshops in nearby communities. "This feels like a baby version of Era Essentials," she wrote to Aura. "Only messier, and without the lavender soaps." Aura's reply arrived 2 days later in the form of a care package, a handwritten note, a scarf she had knitted herself, and a small bottle of essential oil. "Build messy, but build anyway," the note read. Helena pinned it above her desk. One night after a Thrive Collective event, Helena stayed late to clean up. She was scrubbing juice from the linoleum when an older volunteer, Nadia, asked, "Why are you here? You're one of the top students. You could be anywhere." Helena paused. "Because someone once gave me a second chance, and I want to create a world where that's not rare." Nadia looked at her for a moment, then nodded. Good reason. That night, Helena lay awake, the hum of campus life drifting through her window. Her scar was nearly invisible now, but the memory of it had never faded. The pain had shaped her, but so had the healing. And for the first time, she saw them not as opposites, but as pieces of the same story. The idea for the foundation came, slowly, like seeds planted in different parts of her life. In class, she learned how nonprofits scaled impact without losing soul. In Thrive Collective, she saw firsthand how small gestures changed lives. In her own reflection, She remembered what it meant to feel unworthy of being seen. She began drafting a plan. She called it the Ara Foundation for Burn Survivors. It would offer free reconstructive surgery, emotional support, mentorship, and reintegration. Programs for children and teens with visible scars, especially those abandoned, like she once was. The first person she showed it to was Mara, now studying creative writing at another university. They met halfway between campuses, at a small cafe with bad coffee and soft music. Helena handed her the printed packet, watching, nervously. By the third page, Mara had tears in her eyes. "This is it," she said. "This is your voice." Helena blinked. "You think so?" "I know so." In her sophomore year, Helena pitched the idea at the university's social venture, competition. She stood in a packed auditorium, nerves sharp but controlled. Behind her were slides filled with stats and projections. In her hand was a clicker, and in her chest was a truth so personal it felt sacred. "I was 4 when my face was burned," she began, "and 12 when my parents left me on a snowy sidewalk. They saw me as broken. My grandmother saw me as a beginning." She spoke for 8 minutes. When she finished, the auditorium was silent for a heartbeat. Then came the applause. She didn't win the grand prize, but she won the People's Choice Award, along with a micro-grant to build a pilot version of the program. Aura called her that night. "You just planted something beautiful," she said. "Now water it." Junior year brought more pressure, but also more clarity. Helena interned with a global wellness company where she saw both the brilliance and flaws of ethical branding. She took courses in health policy, nonprofit law, and sustainable leadership. She wrote a paper that was later published in a student journal titled "Profit Without People is Just Noise." One professor pulled her aside after class. "You know, you're not just learning the material, you're pushing it forward." Helena smiled, not out of arrogance, but something deeper. Maybe this was her place in the world, not just surviving it, but shaping it. During the winter break of her 3rd year, she returned to the mansion. Aura had grown slower, but her mind remained sharp. She reviewed Helena's foundation pitch deck with a red pen and a cup of rooibos tea. "These projections are good," she said, circling numbers. "But think bigger." "I don't want to overpromise," Helena said. "Then promise. Something worth delivering." They spent hours refining the plan. Lena made snacks and interrupted only to insist on stretching breaks and soup. At the end of the week, Aura handed the folder back. "This is almost ready," she said. "Almost? You need one more thing. Storytelling. People give when they feel. Show them what this means." Helena started writing that night. She didn't just explain the mission. She told the story. The scar, the sidewalk, the cocoa in Aura's kitchen, the first mirror she didn't flinch at. The essay ended with a single line. "I was told I wasn't worth saving. This foundation exists to say otherwise." By the time she graduated, Helena had offers from 3 consulting firms, 2 think tanks, and a non-profit in Geneva. She turned them all down because the thing she wanted most wasn't a prestigious job, it was impact, it was healing, and it was hers to build. The launch of the Ara Foundation began not with fireworks, but with a single room, a modest space above an old bakery in downtown Boston, with creaky floors, tall windows, and the lingering scent of cinnamon. Helena stood at the center, a clipboard in hand and her sleeves rolled up, surveying what would become headquarters for the mission she had built from hope. "It's perfect," she said. Ardan, her newly hired assistant, stepped beside her. "It's a start." He was calm by nature, precise, quiet, but with an uncanny ability to anticipate what needed doing before she even voiced it. They had met during a campus volunteer event and kept in touch. When Helena posted the job opening, he applied with a simple note. "I want to help you build this. I believe in it." He was punctual, meticulous, and somehow never overbearing. And most importantly, he listened. In the early weeks, they worked side by side, unpacking furniture, organizing donor lists, writing endless grant proposals. Ardan set up the CRM system. Helena handled the legal paperwork. They ran on coffee and conviction. One evening, as they painted the meeting room walls a soft shade of fern green, Helena glanced at him. "You don't talk much," she said. He looked up from his roller. "I figure the work should speak first," she smiled. "You're in the right place, then." The foundation's first case was a girl named Roya, 8 years old, with burn scars across her neck and shoulder from a house fire. She arrived at the clinic holding her older brother's hand and refusing to meet anyone's eyes. "She's scared of mirrors," the brother explained quietly. "She covers all the ones at home." Helena knelt to Roya's level. "That's okay," she said softly. "I used to hate mirrors too." Roya peeked at her, curious. "But I found new things to look at," Helena continued. "Books, stars, people who didn't flinch." Arden watched the interaction from the doorway, his gaze steady. Later, as they entered the notes into the system, he spoke quietly. "You have a gift." Helena paused. "What gift?" "The way you reach them. You don't just run this place, you understand it." As months passed, the ARA Foundation grew, a partnership with Massachusetts General, an anonymous donor who funded the second wing. The first gala, held in a rented ballroom with paper lanterns and live jazz. Helena gave a short speech that night. "We are here for every child told they were too damaged to be seen, for every scar that became a shame instead of a story. This place says, you are enough. You always were." The applause was thunderous. Afterward, Ardan handed her a glass of sparkling water and a quiet smile. "You keep saying things that matter," he said. "I just speak what I needed to hear," she replied. Their connection deepened slowly. Lunch breaks turned into long conversations about family, ambition, fears. Ardan spoke of growing up with a single mom, moving often, how stability always felt temporary. One rainy afternoon, they found themselves alone in the office, the storm muting the city outside. Helena sat on the couch, barefoot, her laptop on her knees. Ardan brought over tea. "You always know when I need a break," she said. He sat beside her, a respectful distance apart. "You carry a lot. Someone should carry some of it with you." She looked at him then, really looked. His eyes were dark and steady, not intense, just present. She hadn't realized how rare that was. "Thank you," she whispered. They didn't name what was growing between them. Not at first. It was in the way he remembered her coffee order, the way she said goodnight and he waited to make sure she had a ride, the way their silences weren't heavy, just full. One evening, after a particularly long day, Helena stayed late to finish patient intake reviews. Ardan appeared in the doorway with takeout and a tired smile. "You haven't eaten," she blinked. "I didn't even notice." "Exactly." They sat on the office floor, eating noodles from cartons. The overhead lights were off, the glow from the city outside casting soft gold through the windows. "You know," Ardan said between bites, "I've never met anyone who makes people feel seen like you do." Helena stirred her noodles. "That's funny. I spent years trying to be invisible." He looked at her for a long time. "I've never not seen you." Something shifted in the air. He didn't move closer. He didn't reach for her hand, but she felt it. That quiet, careful tether being tied between them. Weeks passed. Spring unfurled across Boston in green bursts and birdsong. The foundation celebrated its one-year anniversary with a picnic for the families they had helped. Kids ran across the grass, laughter echoing through the park. Helena sat on a blanket watching Roya, now beaming, now twirling, now unafraid of her reflection in a bubble floating by. "She's different," Helena said. "You helped her be," Arden replied beside her. "No," Helena said. We did. He looked at her then, and this time, it was more than silence between them. Later that evening, as they packed up folding chairs and picnic baskets, he paused. Helena, she turned. I admire your strength, he said, but I love your kindness more. She froze. You what? He smiled, small and steady. I love you, not in spite of your past, because of everything you've overcome. Helena didn't answer. At first, she looked at him, the man who had stood by her, respected her pace, never demanded a thing but always gave. The man who saw not just what she had built, but what had built her. She stepped forward, took his hand, and said, I think I've loved you longer than I realized. They didn't rush. There were no grand declarations, no sudden entanglements. They went slow, learning the shape of a life built with care. It was a relationship forged like the foundation itself, with purpose, honesty, and deep roots. One night, weeks later, they walked together through the empty foundation hall. The lights were low. Helena paused at the wall where photos of children and families lined the corridor. She looked at them, at the lives they had touched. This place has my heart, she said. I know, Ardon replied. That's why it works. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small box. Helena blinked. What's that? He opened it. Inside was a delicate silver ring, shaped like a tiny vine curling around itself. I don't need a perfect moment, he said. I just need a true one. Her breath caught. This is that moment, he added, voice soft. Helena looked down at the ring, then at him, and nodded. Yes. The letter came in Aura's handwriting, elegant, slow, and still somehow commanding. Helena found it on her desk at the foundation office one morning, placed neatly beside a small package wrapped in silver paper. The note read, Come home this weekend. We need to talk, and yes, I'm fine. Don't panic. A. When Helena arrived, at the mansion 2 days later, Aura was waiting in her study, seated in her favorite chair by the window, a wool blanket over her knees and Lena standing nearby with a tray of tea. I'm not dying, Aura said before Helena could open her mouth. Not yet, at least, Lena mumbled, pouring the tea. Just old, Aura added, smiling faintly. And tired. The kind of tired that doesn't go away with naps. Helena sat beside her, quiet and alert. I've been thinking about Ara Essentials, Aura said, stirring her tea slowly. About what it needs, what it deserves. She looked at Helena. It needs you. Helena blinked. Me? I built it to heal people, Aura said. But you've turned healing into something far more powerful. You lead with heart. You understand people. You don't just care about results. You care about why. I don't know how to run a company, Helena said softly. Aura chuckled. Neither did I. But I learned. And so will you. She reached into the drawer beside her and pulled out a thick binder. Financial reports, transition plans, key contacts, and a note on top that read, For Helena. Because you're ready. Helena held the binder like it was something sacred. I'll guide you, Aura said, as long as I can. But I won't always be here. The room fell quiet. Why now? Helena asked. Because I want to give this to you while I'm still alive to watch you thrive. The transition wasn't instant, but it was deliberate. Helena shadowed every department head at Ara Essentials. She toured the production facilities, asked dozens of questions in board meetings, and spent hours each night going through archives and reports Aura had saved from decades past. She didn't try to copy her grandmother. She tried to understand her, and then she began to make it her own. She expanded employee wellness programs. She implemented new sustainability practices. She met with farm partners personally. At every turn, she asked one thing: what would Aura have done? And what can I do better? The staff watched her with cautious curiosity at first. "She's young," someone whispered in a hallway. "Too gentle," another added. But over time, something shifted. Helena remembered names, asked about families, showed up at warehouse staff birthdays and late-night inventory checks. She wasn't trying to prove herself. She was building something real, and people noticed. Back at the mansion, Aura grew slower. Her voice, though still, firm, softened at the edges. She no longer walked without assistance. Her hands trembled more often, but her mind? Sharp as ever. They spent long evenings by the fire, talking through legacy plans and laughing over old marketing disasters. "Did you really approve a wheatgrass shampoo?" Helena asked one night. "It sold terribly," Aura admitted, "but the cows loved it." One evening, Helena found her grandmother asleep in the study, a blanket draped over her, a folder open on her lap. It was Helena's latest business proposal, one focused on integrating trauma-informed care into Aura's workplace culture. Aura had marked it with her usual red pen. A note on the cover read, "Excellent. You're not just running Aura, you're evolving it." The day Aura passed, the sky was quiet. She died in her sleep, in her bed, in the home she had built with care. Lena found her in the early morning, a soft smile on her face, and tears already forming in her eyes. Helena stood beside the bed, holding Aura's hand long after it had grown still. No words came at first, just the ache. Sharp, bottomless, personal. Lena rested a hand on her shoulder. "She saw everything you became," she whispered, "and she left knowing you'd carry it forward." The funeral was held at the Raventon Church with the white stone columns and stained glass windows. The same church Helena had passed countless times, but never truly entered until that day. People came from across the country, former employees, business partners, strangers who had been touched by Aura's work. Dozens of children and families from the foundation attended, many with scars of their own and eyes full of gratitude. Helena stood at the front of the room, a deep blue dress hugging her frame, her scar visible beneath soft curls. She took a breath and began. "Aura wasn't just my grandmother. She was my beginning. She found me on a snowy day when no one else wanted me. She opened her home, her arms, her life. She taught me that love doesn't ask for perfection, that healing is messy and real and possible. She taught me to lead. But more than that, she taught me to care." Her voice wavered. "And now, everything I do, every child we help, every voice we lift, it's her. I am her legacy, and I will carry it with everything I have." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. That night, after everyone had gone, Helena walked alone through the quiet mansion. She paused in the study, now hers. The binder sat on the desk, its pages worn, full of Aura's notes. She opened to the first page. A line was written in the margins. "Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build into someone else." Helena closed the binder and looked out the window. Snow was falling softly again. But this time, it didn't feel cold. The house was never truly quiet anymore. Not with two children under the age of 7 chasing each other through the halls, knocking over pillows, shrieking with laughter. Not with the kitchen constantly alive, cookies baking, tea boiling, music from old radios blending with soft humming from Lena, who had long ago stopped being just a housekeeper and become something like a godmother to the whole home. And Helena wouldn't have it any other way. She stood in the hallway of the mansion, once her grandmother's, now fully hers, barefoot and smiling, listening to the chaos. The walls had been painted in new shades, light terracotta, sage, lavender, but the soul of the place remained unchanged. "Mommy!" Her daughter's voice echoed up the stairs. "Yes, Wisa. Jonan is being a troll." "That's his job," Helena called back. "You be the elf. Make peace." More laughter. Footsteps pounding. Ardan appeared from the study, holding a cup of coffee and shaking his head. They've formed rival kingdoms again. Should we intervene? We should. Let them negotiate. Builds character. Helena chuckled. You just don't want to get hit with a foam sword again. I still have a bruise, he said, mock serious. She leaned against him, and for a moment, they stood in peaceful stillness. In the years following Aura's passing, Helena had stepped fully into the role of CEO at Aura Essentials. The company had grown under her guidance, not just in revenue, but in reputation. It was now known not only for quality, but for its deep commitment to social responsibility. Employees had on-site counseling, flexible parental leave, and quarterly mental health retreats. A new line of skincare, created specifically for burn survivors, was launched under the name Aura. And beside the business, the Aura Foundation continued to flourish. They expanded to 4 cities, added scholarships, built partnerships with hospitals around the world, and every year on the anniversary of the foundation's launch, Helena gave the same speech to a new group of families. You are not broken, she would say. You are becoming. On a quiet Sunday evening, Helena sat in the garden as snow began to fall, soft and slow like a memory. Wisa climbed into her lap, her curls wild, cheeks pink from running in the cold. Tell me a story, she whispered. Helena wrapped a blanket around them both. What kind of story? The one, Wisa said. The real one. Helena kissed her forehead and began. Once, there was a little girl who was left in the snow. She told it simply. The burn, the shame, the cruel words, the door opening, the arms waiting, the firelight, the cocoa, the surgeries, the fear, the books, the mirrors. The girl with curly hair who sat beside her in class. The boy who loved her for her kindness. The woman who showed her that scars could lead, not just survive. Wisa listened with wide eyes, hands gripping her mother's fingers. But what happened to the little girl? She whispered. She grew up, Helena said. And she found her voice. She used it to help others find theirs. Wisa was quiet for a long time. Your scar is pretty, she said suddenly. Helena blinked. Why? Because it's part of your story, and it means you're strong. Helena hugged her tighter, feeling tears prick behind her eyes. Thank you, Wisa. The little girl looked up. When I grow up, can I be like you? No, Helena said gently. You'll be like you. But if you carry kindness and courage and the stories of those who came before, you'll be more than enough. Inside, the house glowed with warmth. Lena stirred soup in the kitchen. Jonan lay on the rug, drawing what looked like a spaceship, made entirely of marshmallows. Arden lit the fireplace, then walked over to Helena, brushing snowflakes from her shoulder. She said she wants to be like you, he whispered. She already is, Helena replied. They stood at the window, watching the snow settle across the garden, white over green, silence over memory. A photo of Aura sat on the mantel, smiling gently from behind a thin glass frame. You think she'd be proud? Helena asked. Ardan kissed her forehead. She already was. That night, after the children were tucked in and the house quieted to a soft hum, Helena stepped out onto the balcony. The same balcony she had once cried under as a child, abandoned and afraid. The stars were sharp and clear, scattered across the sky like silver dust. She closed her eyes and let the wind brush her face. Aura, she whispered, I hope you see this. I hope you know. She pressed her hand to the spot above her heart. Your love made this life possible. Behind her, Arden stepped outside, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. What are you thinking? She smiled. Just how far I've come. The next morning, Wisa brought down a page she'd written in crayon. It said, once there was a girl with a star on her cheek, and the star made her magic, and she helped people, and she made cookies too. Helena laughed. I don't remember the cookie part. That's my twist, Wisa said proudly. Helena hung it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a daisy. In the years that followed, Helena continued to lead Ara with quiet conviction. She spoke at conferences, mentored young women, and made time to have breakfast with her children every single day, no matter how full her calendar became. Each scarred child who entered the Foundation's doors was met not with sympathy, but with celebration. Each person she trained, each policy she signed, each heart she helped lift, carried a thread of the girl she used to be, and through it all, she never forgot that it started with one open door, one cup of cocoa, one voice that said, "You're safe now." On the 15th anniversary of the Ara Foundation, Helena gave a speech in the same ballroom where she had once spoken as a nervous young founder. Now she stood with poise and power, her daughter beside her, her son fidgeting in his suit. She looked out at the crowd, hundreds of faces, some scarred, some whole, all radiant. "I used to think I was broken," she said. "I used to believe the worst thing about me was the thing people could see. But love," she continued, "rewrote that story. One act at a time." She reached for Wisa's hand. "Scars are not shame. They are proof that we were hurt, and that we healed, and that we are still here." Applause filled the room like thunder. That night, back at the mansion, Helena stood once more on the balcony. Snow fell around her. The sky was a blanket of stars. She traced the scar on her cheek with 2 fingers. Faint now, almost invisible, but still hers, still part of her. Not a flaw, a map, a constellation.